Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to dig into, I think, is one of the most interesting articles I've come across so far. It's called Searching for King Hiram, who helped Solomon build his temple. And this is really going to blow your mind. It blew mine, and it takes a lot to blow my mind. So, remarkable discoveries in ancient Sidon of the Phoenicians of great stone coffins filled with a mysterious liquid in which the royal dead lay fresh and lifelike after thousands of years. So it says here the legendary tomb of King Hiram near Tyre, but his body is now supposed to rest in one of the stone coffins still hidden under Sidon. So I did look up where Sidon was, and it is right over here. Interestingly, close to Mount Hermon. There's Tyre, and I believe like this is the whole land of Canaan. And when I looked it up on Bible History Daily, it says the Sidonians were the inhabitants of ancient Sidon, a seaport on the Mediterranean Sea in modern Lebanon. Those familiar with the biblical text will recall that Sidon was an influential, wealthy Phoenician city when the kings of Israel and Judah ruled during the Iron Age, yet Sidon was a significant site before this period too. So if you go down here, biblical Sidon is perhaps most famously or infamously known as the birthplace of the Phoenician princess Jezebel, 1 Kings 16:31, who became queen of the Israelites during King Ahab's reign in the 9th century BCE, the Iron Age. In the Bible, Jezebel is notorious for persecuting the worship of Yahweh and for demanding that Israelites worship Baal. So there we have what's going on over there. And that gives you a little bit of background about what we're going to read. So let me get this down here. I'm going to have to blow it up because it's super tiny. So there we have the picture of them going into the tombs with these people that are looking just like they're freshly interred. So it says not only the bodies of the kings, but those of the queens of ancient Phoenicia must have been placed in this strange liquid, and the scientists who find the royal dead in their secret crypts will look upon a marvelous and weird sight, for they will behold these women not as ugly mummies, but in all their beauty, just as they were thousands of years ago. And this one says, out of the sarcophagi recovered from the secret subterranean tunnels of Sidon, showing the rich sculpturing. And then just a couple more pictures. And sorry, I'm freezing. I have a wool sweater on. I'm in Florida, and it's freaking cold. It's got to be in the 60s, and I just can't take it, but I'll try not to shiver. A detail of the sculpture on one side of the astonishing sarcophagus of Alexander discovered at Sidon. So that's that. And then down here, another sarcophagus showing where the Vandals broke into it to let the mysterious preservative drain out. So, yeah, all those stories we heard of them going over during the Iraq and Iran war and breaking up all the tombs and the giants that they fought. And who was it? Hillary Clinton that wanted to bring back the body of one of the kings that they found over there. I forgot his name. But yeah, so they know about this stuff and they have known about it for a really long time. This is 1926. So let's get into it. Constantinople, April 19th. Scientists excavating among the ruins of ancient Sidon of the Phoenicians are searching for the body of Hiram, king of Tyre, who helped Solomon build the great temple at Jerusalem. They expect to find the old king floating around in a big stone coffin, which is filled with a mysterious liquid that has preserved him fresh and lifelike. He will be no mummy like Pharaoh Tutankhamun, but exactly as he was when he was laid away 3,000 years ago. In the same secret crypt will probably be some of his wives and daughters, each of them just as fresh and unspoiled as himself. Then the world will be able to look at photographs of them and see whether they deserve the reputation passed down through the ages of having been the most beautiful women of their time. I didn't know that. The news of this remarkable search leaked out when the Turkish government stopped the distinguished archaeologist Professor Breasted of the University of Chicago from shipping over to America 32 magnificently carved sarcophagi unearthed in the network of subterranean passages under Sidon. Some of the huge stone coffins date back to 1300 BC, that is 300 years before King Hiram was born. The secret of the mysterious liquid-filled sarcophagi has been jealously guarded by a handful of archaeologists ever since the first of the carven caskets were discovered 40 years ago. So we're going back into like the late 1800s. At that time, the chief of the expedition on the spot was approached by a native who described the objects and offered them for surreptitious sale. The scientist was incredulous. It was not even dreamed that such things existed, but the native was persistent. He said that he and some others had found an entrance to what had seemed to be an ancient tunnel under the city. And yeah, we find ancient tunnels everywhere now. It's just a huge cavernous earth that we're living on. And let me get back to where I was. They had explored it, had found many other passages running into it, and at last they had come to a vault in which were 16 of the sarcophagi. With great labor, they had moved the massive coffins to a safe hiding place. The director could come and see that it was the truth. And it was the truth. The astonished eyes of the scientists looked upon 16 works of ancient art, the like of which never had been beheld. They were all elaborately carved, and the sculpture on one of them at least was equal to the finest of the Greek marbles. Certainly they had been designed to hold the bodies of most important personages, but to the increased amazement of the archaeologists and their disappointment, they were all empty. There was not a trace of the bodies they must have held, no dust of them, not even a bone. The natives said that they had been empty when they found them, but examination showed that their hermetically sealed tops had been pried open but a short time before, and a few of them had fragments broken out of their sides as though by blows of a heavy hammer. The fractures were fresh. The evidence clearly was that the finders of the sarcophagi had broken into them to see what treasures they might contain. It seemed incredible that they should have been empty, but what had become of the bodies? Among those tremendously interested in the work at Sidon was the late Reverend J.B. Nyes of New York City. Dr. Nyes died recently, leaving large endowments to the School of Archaeology at Jerusalem. Dr. Nyes, who certainly should have known the facts, told under seal of secrecy. Let me get up here. A remarkable story, but one that may now, because of developments, be revealed. According to Dr. Nyes, the discoverers at last admitted that the coffins had not been empty. Each one had held a body in so perfect a state of preservation that at first the finders had fled from the place in superstitious terror. Driven back by greed, they had found that these bodies were submerged in a colorless, odorless liquid. Because the sarcophagi would be easier to move empty, they had drained out this liquid. The bodies had then rapidly disintegrated, rotting quickly away as the air touched them. They had been entirely nude, the natives said, without clothing or ornaments of any kind. But this the scientists never believed. They thought it more likely that the Vandals had secured a considerable treasure of gold and jewels. It was not likely that those who had been placed in the coffins would have been stripped of everything before interment. It was, of course, impossible to keep such a discovery secret. The Turkish government stepped in and claimed the monuments. Hamdi Bey, at that time the head of the Ottoman Museum in Constantinople, had the sarcophagi taken to that museum, and there they are today. The thieves were arrested and probably died in prison. At any rate, whatever else they may have found never came to light. Professor Breasted, it appears, brought the sarcophagi which the Turkish government has forbidden to be shipped away from the estate of the late Dr. George Ford, who had been living in Sidon for the last 45 years and knew all about the first liquid-filled 16. His theory was that the thieves had been afraid to dip their hands in the stuff to remove the bodies to rob them of their ornaments, and this was why they had poured it out. Most probably, the long-dead occupants did disintegrate quickly when taken from their preservative bath. The specimens he had collected had all of them suffered the same treatment before they came into his hands. As a result of the disclosures, it is reported that the Ottoman Museum officials have asked the governor to take extra precautions in patrolling the entrances to the underground tunnels and to exercise special watchfulness in preventing the grave robbery from something injuring any more of the sarcophagi. A commission from the museum will work with the expedition already there for a systematic exploration of the tunnels. But what reason have they for supposing it is possible to find the body of King Hiram of Tyre in Sidon? Sidon and Tyre were the two great ancient capitals of the Phoenicians. They were both on the western coast of Syria, on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians, one of the most enterprising of the ancient nations. They have been called the ancient Yankees, for they were the traders of the Mediterranean. Interesting that we call Yankees here in the U.S. the greatest of shipbuilders of the time, and they planted their commercial colonies in Carthage, Crete, and the other islands of that sea. Their ships went all over the world. They were the first to discover and to exploit the tin mines of England when the inhabitants of that island were still skin-clad barbarians. They journeyed to Africa and to China and are supposed to have paid occasional visits to the western coast of South America. Sidon was the old capital, and Hiram was the first great king of Tyre, which was built not far away. At that time it had begun to eclipse the mother city. Hiram was a contemporary of David and Solomon, and he reigned for 40 years, enlarging his capital, surrounding it by massive fortifications, and rebuilding the temple of the cruel god Melkarth, the Baal of the Bible, to whom little children were fed. He drove back the Palestine pirates, extended greatly the maritime power of Phoenicia, and through his caravans had traveled east and south, he gathered enormous wealth. Hiram was first of all a friend of David, and sent him cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house. If it had not been for him, probably the Temple of Solomon could not have been built, because the Jews were neither skilled carpenters, masons, or architects. It is told in the Old Testament how Solomon, when he was about to build the temple, sent an embassy to Hiram, saying, "Behold, I purpose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God. Now therefore command thou that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon, for thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timbers like unto the Sidonians." And Hiram not only cut the cedars, but sent down to Jerusalem stone cutters and masons to help in building of the temple, and Solomon paid him in wheat for all the work and material which he furnished. The logs of cedar were floated down the Mediterranean and unloaded at the point nearest Jerusalem and hauled overland. All the stories to be found in 1 Kings 5. It seems that Sidon continued to be used as a necropolis of the kings, even though the newer city outstripped it. And this necropolis, or burial place, not only for the kings but for their families and noble, was a hidden one, designed to protect the dead from grave robbers just as elaborately as the hidden temples of the pharaohs in the valleys of kings in Egypt. Indeed, it was better designed for secrecy than theirs, because it was not until the first sarcophagus was found 40 years ago that anyone knew that it existed. The Phoenicians hollowed out under Sidon mile upon mile of tunnels and crypts in which the bodies in their elaborately carved coffins were placed. Undoubtedly, the entrances to some of these tunnels and chambers were masked, that is, walled in and covered for greater secrecy, just as were the tombs of the pharaohs. Within these crypts, it is highly probable, are still hundreds and perhaps thousands of these monuments. When they are found and opened under careful scientific supervision, many astonishing discoveries may be expected, and a whole new flood of light poured upon the Phoenicians, their customs, their origin, and the world of their time. It is not at all unreasonable to suppose that King Hiram's body is here. In fact, it would be unreasonable to suppose otherwise, and his tomb is certain to be worthy of this great monarch. There remains the question of what the mysterious preservative in which they were immersed was made of. The Phoenicians were extraordinary chemists. They guarded their secrets jealously. They had the art of immersing hides in some liquid that made them the equivalent of a coat of mail, so tough and impenetrable that a spear could not be thrust through them, and arrows glanced off of them. They made a purple dye from a shellfish. This dye was responsible for the phrase royal purple. They sold fabrics dipped in it to the kings and nobles of the world. It was so highly prized among some nations that some kings forbade anyone but the royal household to wear it, and hence the phrases the royal purple and to wear the purple. No one either then or since has ever discovered the secret of this dye. It passed with the Phoenicians. They would, of course, have guarded even more jealously the secret of a liquid which would preserve their royal and noble dead. Such a formula would have a deep religious significance, and would have been denied without doubt even to a pharaoh of Egypt. One interesting suggestion is that its base, perhaps, was honey. There is perhaps no better preservative than this product of the bees, and the Sidonians and Tyrians were great beekeepers. The interior of the sarcophagus was first treated probably with beeswax or paraffin, both of which were common and used by the Phoenicians, so that the porous stone could not absorb the liquid or allow air to enter. The sarcophagus was then filled, the body placed in it, and the heavy stone top, lined also with wax, was fitted into the lower section so as to be absolutely sealed against the air. The successful analysis of this liquid, if found, will be equally as important as any historical discovery. It is a curious fact that Nebuchadnezzar, the Assyrian ruler, actually, I think that was Nebuchadnezzar that they found over there. The Assyrian ruler conquered Phoenicia in the same year in which he destroyed the Temple of Solomon, which Hiram helped to build. This was in 586 BC. In 332 BC, it was conquered by Alexander the Great, whose finest monument, strangely enough, is among those first 16 coffins which revealed the hidden subterranean burial place. This coffin is one of the greatest relics of Greek art. The name of the Alexander sarcophagus was given it because it bears on all sides scenes from the life of Alexander the Great, and among them what is believed to be an accurate portrait of him. Experts say that it must have been carved shortly before his death, and that the artist who did it must have been one of the famous school of Praxiteles, perhaps the greatest of the Greek sculptors. Whose body it contained is unknown, but he must have been one of the most powerful and wealthy of Alexander's officers to have been able to have such a thing made for him. Or it may have held the body of some beautiful princess of Sidon, or of Tyre, whom Alexander loved. So, crazy stuff from the early 1800s. No wonder they went back over there and were trying to find this stuff. I know Hitler also went around the world trying to find things, and our realm is filled with such amazing things that we have yet to discover, or that have been discovered and have just been held secret from us. But anything's possible, and I hope you enjoyed this one. I did. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you.